let's look at another way on how we can get into our target system. In this video, I'm going to be targeting a database service. If we go back to our Nmap results, we see that on TCP port 3306, there's a MySQL service running. This is a database service. And as we know, databases can contain a lot of sensitive information, such as usernames, passwords, and so on. Going back to my favorites menu in Kali, there's a section for database assessment. And what I want to try and do now is I want to try to connect to this database, but for me to do that, I need to have the correct username and password. So what I will do is I'm going to try to guess this username and password using a tool called SQLDict, which is short for SQL Dictionary. The reason it's called SQLDict or SQL Dictionary is because this type of password guessing is called password dictionary attack. In other words, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a small list of probable or possible passwords, and the technical term for this is called a password dictionary. And then I'm going to be trying every one of these passwords in the hope that one of them will work. But as you can see here, the SQLDict program did not work. It tells me that it looks like Wine32 is missing. Wine32 is a program on Kali and other Linux distributions that allows you to run certain Windows programs. So in Windows, for example, you will see these programs that end with a .exe extension. These are executable programs. Obviously, these are designed to be built and run on Windows. They're not designed for Linux. Wine is a program that allows you to run certain Windows applications on Linux. However, it looks like it's not present on Kali. But we do know by now how to install programs. And as you can see, conveniently here, the command that you need to use to install Wine is highlighted. So all I need to do is just copy and paste this command to get started with installing Wine. Now here's something that I haven't shown you before. You've seen the dpackage and the apt-get commands. Notice the and between them, the ampersand between them. This allows me to run more than one command at once. So what I'm telling my Kali Linux right now is to run the dpackage command. Once it's done, run the apt-get command. Once it's done, run another apt-get command. And now the first command has started running. It's trying to fetch the packages that it needs. It is a big download, so I'm not going to wait for it. I'll leave it running, and meanwhile, I'm going to go and show you another tool that we can use to accomplish the same objective. And you can find that going back to our favorites menu under the password attacks. There are different types of password attacks. We're going to be going with one of the easiest ones, which is attacking an online service. We've seen in other videos how we have SSH running and FTP running, and these are services that usually require a username and a password. When you attack these services, trying to guess these usernames and passwords on services that are online and running is called an online password attack. MySQL, the database service that's running on our target system, is going to be our target right now. We want to guess the username and password, and this again is called an online password attack. So what I want to show you under this menu is the word lists directory. We've seen in previous videos the rock file, when we talked about how to untar and uncompress a file. You'll notice here though that this is already extracted. It is no longer in a tar or compressed format. And this is because I'm using the latest Kali version. In the latest Kali version, the rock file is already decompressed and ready for you to use in a text format. Now I'm going to be using this file, so I'm just going to copy the path to it because I'm going to be needing that later on. Now here's something I want you to notice. If you look at the password attacks again, try and find a tool called Hydra. Take a second, look through the menu, and try to find the Hydra tool. You'll see that it's not there. And this is something important that I'd like you to keep in mind. The name of this menu that we're looking at is the favorites menu. So this is a list of the favorite tools that Kali decided you could be using. However, this does not cover every single tool in Kali, and it most definitely does not cover every single hacking tool. This is why, and I keep emphasizing this again and again, this is why it's really important to understand the concepts as opposed to just memorizing tools. So now the concept is we're doing a password attack. What tool do we use? That really depends on the situation. Sometimes you try one tool, it doesn't work. You go and find another tool, you try it and that works. So don't get hung up on what you see in this favorite list. Don't get hung up on one tool. I know I keep repeating this concept, but it's really important to drive this home. And the tool I'm going to be using for this exercise is called Hydra. If you type Hydra, you'll see the help file with an example of how to use it. Now, like I said, to be able to do the password guessing, I need a password dictionary or a list of probable passwords. So I went and did a quick research on the top worst passwords of all time. There's a list on Semantic of the top 500 worst passwords. I'm just going to go ahead and take the top 50. I'll copy those. And now I need to create my file. I'm going to create a temp file using nano. And I'll paste the copied text. You see all these areas highlighted in red? This is a tab delimiter. These are all areas that are done using the tab key. Now in this format, as you can see, the file is of no use to me. What I need to do is I need to create a list of all these words one after the other, without the tab delimiter, without it being in different columns, and obviously without the numbers on the far left as well. So how do I do that? We go back to the commands that we learned in the previous sections. I'm going to cat the file so you can see the output on the screen. So this is what it looks like right now. I need to figure out a way to reorganize this file. So I'm going to pipe the cat command into the cut command, and I'm going to use a delimiter of tab. Now notice here that I'm using the $sign. You might be thinking, but Tariq, you didn't tell us how to use the $sign, and why is this appearing here for the first time? Again, I cannot really possibly teach you every single command and every single option of every command. What you need to know here is that you want to use the tab delimiter to cut the text out. You go do a very quick search and you'll find out how to use that. So again, to use the tab delimiter, I need to precede it with the $sign and the -F for field 2. And when I hit enter, I get a nice long list of all the possible passwords that I'm going to try. Now, obviously, this is the output on the screen, so I need to save this in a file. I'm going to be using the redirect command and redirect the output to a text file I'm going to name worst-50. You might have noticed here that I did not put an extension at the end of the file, so I did not name it .txt, for example, or .doc, because Linux treats every file as a text file, so it can automatically read the content of the file. Let me do a final edit. I'm going to be removing the top password because this is useless to me, and I'm doing that using the Ctrl-K shortcut that we saw in Nano. And towards the end, I'm just gonna hit enter because I want to add a blank password. So this new line here represents a blank password. If somebody is trying, for example, the username admin and no password, this is what it represents. Now let me go back and check very quickly on the installation of Wine. It's waiting for some input. Here we go. And it's continuing. All right, let me go back to my Hydra tool. You can see here the example of usage. I'm just going to copy the same example. I'll type Hydra -L root. This tells Hydra that I want you to target the root username, because when we're doing password attacks, half of the battle is using the correct username. It does not matter if you have the right password if you don't have the right username. You can't log in still. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to set the username. And because I know I'm targeting a Linux system, I'm guaranteed to have the root user present on that system. So now that I set the username, I'm going to type -P and the name of my password dictionary file. Then I need to specify what service I'm targeting. Am I targeting FTP? Am I targeting SSH? In this case, I'm targeting the MySQL service. And the format that Hydra accepts is : / and the IP address of the target. I'll hit enter, and you can almost immediately see that Hydra found one password successfully. Here's a bit of reporting. So 51 login tries were done, and here's the login that was found. You notice that there was no password reported here, meaning that the password that was found was the blank password. Let me go back and double check on my Wine installation. Again, it needs another input. Let me hit enter, and here we go. Now, I have the username and the password to log into the MySQL database. With FTP, we learned that we need an FTP client to log in. So something like FileZilla, for example. With SSH, we need an SSH client to log in. So in Windows, we used PuTTY. On Linux, we use the SSH client. With MySQL, we need a MySQL client to log in. Again, you might have said, but Tariq, you didn't tell us about what client to use. And again, I'm going to repeat the same thing. I cannot possibly tell you how to interact with every single service out there. You need to do a little bit of research on your own. In this case, however, I am going to tell you. In Kali, all we need to do is type MySQL -u for the user and root, because this is the user that we want to use to log in, -p, I'll leave that as blank, and -h for host, the IP address of the host or the target that I'm trying to connect to. I get prompted to enter the password. We know by now the password is blank, so I'm just gonna hit enter, and here we go. Look how the prompt has changed. Now I'm interacting with the MySQL database. Awesome. So now we're in. I'm gonna give you a crash course on SQL. If you have never interacted with an SQL database before, there are certain graphical clients that you can use, which can look a lot prettier than what we're doing right now. But for now, because we're already logged in, I'm going to give you a quick crash course with some simple commands that are very easy to understand. So for example, I want to see what databases are present on that MySQL server. There might be more than one database. And to do that, it's as simple as saying show databases and semicolon at the end. Don't forget the semicolon, because that tells the MySQL that this is the end of the command. If you do not use the semicolon, you do not close the command, the MySQL client will just sit there waiting for you to do something. And I hit enter. And as you can see here, we have more than one database. I'm just gonna go ahead with the first one, the DVWA. The information schema, by the way, is a database of the database. So it's, without going into a lot of details, it's a database that contains information about the other databases. So that's something that you will always see. It's not very interesting for us to look at it right now. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to look at the first database after the information schema, which is the DVWA. And to do that, it's as simple as typing use DVWA semicolon and enter. So I would like to see what tables we have. And to do that, I type show tables semicolon and enter. We have two tables here, guestbook and users. Users looks interesting because that might have usernames and passwords. So I'm going to tell the database to please show me everything in the users table. And to do that, I'm going to type select star. Star here is a wildcard that we saw before in previous videos. And it's a wildcard that means everything. So effectively what I'm typing is select everything from the table name, which is users, semicolon and enter. And here we go. This is what we have in the users table. We have the user ID, first name, last name, user, password, and avatar. So we actually have users and passwords. This is awesome. This is what stolen credentials look like. If you've heard about the big breaches that happened, for example, to LinkedIn, to Yahoo, to all these big companies, what happens is that attackers get in, get to a database somewhere, they find a list of users and passwords and dump all of these users and passwords, steal them, and they put them online. Now, you might have noticed that the passwords here don't look exactly like the normal passwords that we see. There's 5 of them, and they all are the same length, and they look pretty random. This is what is known as a hashed password. In other words, and I'm not going to be technically correct 100% here, so for the techies out there, don't get too hung up on what I'm going to say next. This is what an encrypted, let's say, password looks like. It's not exactly encryption, but for the sake of simplicity and easiness, let's assume this is encryption. This is what an encrypted password looks like. So if you take this password as is, the first one, for example, the admin password that starts with 5F4DCC, etc. If you take that as is and try to log in as admin using this password, it will not work. Because this isn't the actual value of the password. This is a hidden value of the password. So what the criminal hackers do is that they get their hands on these encrypted or hashed passwords and they try to crack them. So they try to get the actual password out of this obfuscated text. The ROQ file that I've shown you earlier originated from exercises like this. So criminal hackers got into a website, they dumped millions of password hashes, and they reversed them. They found the actual value, the plain text value of these passwords. If this sounds confusing, don't worry too much about it. We get into a lot more details about this in more advanced courses. For now, what I'd like you to take away from this is that we managed to log into the MySQL database. We found a list of usernames and a list of hashed passwords, or if you want to call it encrypted for now. So now what would be the next step for you as a hacker? You can do one of two things. Now you have a list of usernames. And remember what I told you in password guessing, half of the battle is won by getting the correct usernames. Now you have 5 new usernames. So you could either go ahead and try these usernames with another password attack using Hydra or a similar tool, or if you're feeling more adventurous, you can try and reverse these obfuscated passwords and get the actual password value out of them. I'm not going to show you how to do that. This is going to be your mission for this section. But before I tell you what your mission is, let me very quickly check on the Wine installation and see where it's at. Brilliant. Now it looks like it's ready. So now I can execute the SQL dict. And here we go. It wants a target IP address, a target account, obviously, which is the username, and a password list. Now look at this. If I click on this button here, you could see that it looks like a Windows application. If you click at the drop-down menu, you see desktop, my computer, so on and so forth. So it is actually a Windows application that we managed to run now on Kali. I'm not going to go ahead and run this. Let's go back to your mission. Your mission for this section. If you're feeling a little bit adventurous, try and crack these password hashes. In other words, try to get the actual password value out of these obfuscated long strings of text. There are 2 ways for you to do that. One, it could be as simple as pasting this text value in Google and see if somebody else has done the work for you and they found the password for you. That usually works if your target is using a common password. Or 2, use a tool in Kali that does that for you. The name of the tool that we usually use is called John the Ripper. So go ahead, give that a try, and when you're ready, let's move on to the next section.